Hey guys, alright, well I'm out in the shop today, and today we're going to concentrate on the lift plate for the linear rail conversion. Something that's going to fit my 100mm 3-stage air cylinder. Now, my current machine, I'm running an 80mm, but with the linear rail conversion we're going to go with the 100mm. Now I originally bought this for my current machine. However, it's real big and it just didn't quite fit up there and give me enough space. And it's going to be really tight, even with the linear rail conversion. But the bolt pattern, of course, is not the same, so we're going to have to modify it so that it works for this 100mm cylinder. It's going to be close. These are going to be pushed out really close to the edge, so it may break through. It's going to be really thin if it doesn't. So we'll just see how it goes. So we're going to be doing some boring, counter boring, some contouring, several operations here to get this machined out. So let's get started, and we'll get this stock mounted in there, and we'll get busy. So there we have it. Something happened right here on my facing operation. It looks like a scrub brush got a hold of it there and spun it, so it must have been some debris and got hung up in the cutter. But that'll be okay. This will be actually the bottom side. You'll never see it. So, alright, so we're going to flip this over now and we're going to do the other side. Alright, so I've got the part flipped over. I've re-zeroed to this corner here, and I'm going to run the bottom side. Now the bottom side looks like this. This was the top side we just did, and then so the bottom side just has this right here, and then we're going to face it off and run a chamfer around it. So let's get started. Well, I was hoping that wasn't going to happen, but that's okay. Well, there's the downside to flood coolant. Not a big deal if you're not going to do any videoing, but... take a look. I still got this little mark here. Must be something with my inserts. I'll have to check that out. I thought it was just some chips that maybe got up in there, but apparently not. So anyways, this is the top side, and that should wrap this up. We'll check and see how it fits. Now on the original one I engraved it. However, with this one, these bolt holes, the countersink is so close to the edge that I'm not even going to bother trying to do that. I think it's just going to, you can see they're really close, so I don't want to mess with it right there, end up messing it up. So I'll just leave it like this, fully functional just the way it is. So yeah, now these bolt holes are for M14. These are M14 by 90, and you can see that the head's not going to fit down in there. So what I'm going to have to do, just as I did with these, is I'll just have to turn those down. So I'm just going to stick these in the way. I'm going to turn these down. These are 21.25 millimeters and these are 19, so we'll have to turn that down just a little bit. Should be fine. So I'm going to work on that next, and also work on the standoffs and get those wrapped up, and then we'll be able to mount this to the air cylinder. Now the air cylinder is like so. So this will sit like this, and you can see everything lines up good. All the bolt holes seem to line up, so we are good to go. Alright, so let me get the spacers set up, and we'll make those. Alright guys, well, finished up the lift plate. One thing I just realized is I didn't really need this recess anymore. This recess here was to clear the castle nut for the modified quill, but with the belt drive quill, we don't really need that because it sits well below this bottom piece here. It sits, I don't know, 3/8 of an inch below it. So it's done now. It doesn't really matter. It's not going to affect anything, but it was something I can omit from those drawings. You can see we have our recess. Now this is pretty much the same as the way I did it on the original mill. We've got our top hat, which will lift up and compress our Belvilles. This is exactly the same, so you can go back and check out those videos. So our lift plate's done. We have some spacers. These are just some aluminum tubing. Now I did slightly chamfer the edge here so that it kind of self-centers on the hole. You can see the hole here in the air cylinder has this chamfer on it, and so if I didn't do that, then it kind of slid around this way. It just kind of self-centers, so that lines those up. I've got 4 spacers. These spacers are, for me, it worked out to be 55 millimeters, and then we have some bolts. Now these bolts are really big compared to what we used on the 80 millimeter cylinder, but these bolts are M14 by 90, and I think we used M12s on the 80 millimeter cylinder. So a couple things I had to do to modify these bolts. I actually took some width out of here, and I also turned it down. So I turned these down to a little under 18 millimeters. It's still got a shoulder there to bite on. It's not like there's a lot of load on this, so I don't think it's going to be a problem. I turned the ones down for the 80 millimeter cylinder as well. And I also rounded off this edge here, and I'll talk about that when we get it mounted, what that was for. But now they fit down in there just like so, and that's it. So we just need to assemble this, and then we can take it out to the mill and see how she fits. Now, because this is such a big socket head screw, I don't actually have a 12mm Allen. Imagine that. So I had to try to kind of improvise in order to tighten this up. The biggest Allen head screw wrench I have is a 10mm, which doesn't fit. So what I did was I just took a 12mm bolt. Actually, I think this is probably not even metric. I think this is standard. But it fits, and it allows me to tighten all this up. Now this doesn't have to be super torqued down. It's, you know, just needs to be good and snug, and this allows me to get that tight. Alright, so let's get this out there to the machine and we'll see how it all goes together. Alright guys, well we've got it out here at the mill and we're going to assemble it. There's a couple things I want to show you. Of course we're using TTS, Tormach TTS style collets, and with these collets the ATC holders have this taper on it, but you can get knockoffs that are not ATC. They don't have the groove here, and they also have a straight shank on them. Now they work just fine. However, there are some things that I wanted to point out that I've found over the years while I was working with these. Now we need an R8. We need a 3/4 inch R8 collet. Now of course if you buy the, now we need a 3/4 inch R8 collet in order for this system to work. And you have to be careful with these. Now if you look closely, you'll see that this has got a little bit of a taper on it. It's not just flat straight across. Early on with the X2, I realized that that presented a problem. So what I did was I just ground a flat on here, and that eliminated that issue. But I'm not quite sure if the issue was the fact that I was using homemade holders, or if the fact when I bought some of these knockoffs this wasn't deep enough and it was causing an issue. Okay, but that right there eliminated the issue. I then went and bought a Tormach TTS R8 collet, and it's just completely flat. It has no, doesn't have this chamfer on it, this angle at all. It's just completely flat. Now my buddy Wyatt, he uses the Shars brand, and he doesn't seem to have any issues, but he has all these, he doesn't have any homemade collets, so, or tool holders. Now that's one issue that I found. The second issue is, if you'll look down in here, hopefully you can see this, there is a shoulder right here. And this shoulder prevents the tool holder from going all the way down. Okay, that caused an issue as well. So I had to just kind of can this one once I started using these aftermarket style holders. They worked with the Tormach because the Tormach had this angle on there, so it wasn't a problem. However, that's when I bought the genuine Tormach TTS, and it's flat across there, and it didn't cause any issues. The Tormach is like the Shars. Now the Shars works fine because it doesn't have that shoulder down in there, and all the tools will slide completely up in there. So I guess what I'm saying is, if you're not going to get a genuine Tormach R8 3/4 inch collet, then get one of these Shars. It doesn't have that in there, and it allows it to go all the way down. Alright, so let's get this assembled. So we have our drawbar. Now this is high strength 7/16 by 20 threaded rod. I had a gentleman ask me which I used, and I've used both. I've used medium strength and high strength hardened. This, I think the tensile strength on this is 150,000. We're only going to be putting 3,800 pounds on here, so I think, you know, the medium strength's fine. It might have a little give in it, but I haven't ran into any issues. So, you know, I think 3 feet of this from McMaster-Carr is $12 versus $9 for the medium strength. So spend an extra $4 if you want. This is just a extra long threaded rod coupling that we've turned down on the lathe. Now it has a little bit of a narrower spot here, but this helps keep all the Belvilles centered. Now they will slide on here, however they don't wobble around. And then of course this coincides with the same hole on our top hat, and you can see that the tamper or the taper right there is just at the bottom. So when it releases, it gets smaller, and then as it comes down, it kind of self-centers in the top hat here. Of course, the top hat fits over our spindle here, like so. And then now that keeps everything nice and centered. Alright, now inside the spindle there is a pin, and this pin is to help guide keep this from spinning, and it goes in this slot here. Now this Shars collet won't fit in this mill. It will not. I think this groove is not quite as deep, and so I'm having trouble getting it to go up in there. So I'm going to have to check that out when I disassemble my spindle. However, my cheap Chinese one, apparently it's a little, the groove's a little deeper or something, and it fits up in there. So for now, I'm just going to use that. It'll be a while before I get this going. I'm going to probably disassemble this spindle, put in some good grease, and probably swap out the bearings as well. So let me show you with that one in there. The idea is for this to seat up against the bottom of the spindle, and well, if it can't go up in there all the way, then this is what you get. You get this gap here. So that's no good. However, I do have some homemade collets that I made, and apparently their shanks are shorter, and so it's not an issue. Let's try this ATC one. Yep, see, it still doesn't work in this collet. Now these homemade ones, apparently I made this part a lot shorter. This was for back when I had the X2, so it works just fine. You can see they go up in there. So for now, I'll just use this to tighten this up, because I need to get the correct height for my, or I had to get the correct height for my spacers, I should say. So I just used this one. Alright, so we've got that in there, and you can see how that goes on there. So you can see here that this is actually, the pulley's actually below the plate will be, so I didn't need this recess right here. So I can just omit that now from this model. However, on the original, when I had the modified quill, there was a nut there that held the pulley on the extended quill, and so I needed that. Alright, so let me get this up here and show you what I got. I apologize for this camera. Just not a lot of room to work around here, and you can see how these are protruding below the bottom there, and I was a little concerned that they were going to hit my risers here. However, they do have a little play in them, but just in case, I rounded those bolts off, so when it lifts up, if it does happen to hit the bolt there, it'll slide past it. The guide pins kind of keep it aligned, so it's not too big of an issue. I haven't had any kind of issues with my original machine. I also haven't had any issues. These springs here kind of keep pressure down on it, so there's not any kind of vibration. Haven't had any issue with that either on my original machine. So the system works really well. It's all assembled and looks good. Now I put the air fittings and all on the side because the motor here, the electrical kind of hangs over the side, and I think I might put some kind of sheet metal shroud. I haven't decided, but just in case, all that will be cleared from this extra space here. We're going to mount our solenoid valve down here somewhere, and then of course we'll have a drag chain on the side here for all our electrical and hoses and stuff. So, but you can see, yeah, the pulley clears that really good, so I don't really need to machine that out anymore. But it looks really good. I'm pretty happy with everything so far. Now here I've got a little gap here, and this bolt right here, I've got to get a bolt for that, and I'll probably end up doing just like I did on the original. Let's go take a look at that. Here on the original machine, what I did was I just screwed a nut in there, or excuse me, screwed a bolt in there, and then I just turned it down. And you can see I only have about maybe 3/30 seconds, something like that, of clearance. And that's all I really need to get the stroke length that I need. But this has been working good for a couple of years now and haven't had any kind of issues. So we'll see what we're going to have to do for the linear rail. I'll either do a bolt or I'll weld a washer to the top of the nut there. Alright guys, well I guess this will wrap up the lift plate video. And next I guess we're going to start concentrating on the saddle. I'm going to put my other blocks on here, take some final measurements, and make sure my model is correct, and then we'll start camming it out and machining it out. I've got this big slab of steel, and we're going to have to figure that out, get it cut to the right dimension, and then machine it. I'm already liking the way that feels and the way that sounds with just two of the blocks. So I'll get both blocks on there, and then we'll get this all sorted out. Alright guys, thanks for watching the video. If you're new to my channel and you're just tuning in, click on the subscribe button in the bottom right corner. That way if I post a video that you're interested in, you can have a link to check it out. As always, guys, thanks for watching. Please subscribe, and most importantly, be safe.